This is a 190 Q&A practice test. Plaintiff attorney Mr. Alton, capital A-L-T-O-N. Defense attorney Ms. M.S. Reese, capital R-E-E-S-E. And we'll start with plaintiff attorney. Ready? Okay, and it could also be that the clothing came in contact with something that had gunshot residue on it. Yes. Okay, in this particular case regarding item K1, the jean shorts that were Sustanza brand jean shorts, did you do the GSR or gunshot residue test on that piece of clothing? Yes. What did you find? There were no unique gunshot particles identified. That was on the Sustanza jeans, correct. What about item 2, the blue shirt? There were no unique gunshot residue particles found. What about the jacket, specifically the plaid Synergy Studio by Morgan Cooper jacket? There was one unique gunshot residue particle identified. Okay, and what about the blue High Sierra shorts? There was one unique gunshot residue particle identified. Okay, you mentioned that you do about 6 to 12 dabs with the adhesive disc on the piece of clothing, right? You don't dab the adhesive disc on every part of the clothing, right? So would it be fair to say you cannot rule out the possibility that there might have been additional pieces of gunshot residue on the clothes that simply weren't at a spot where you tapped or applied the adhesive disc? Yes. And you reported these results on what date? February 13th of 2015. All right, thank you. Nothing further. Cross. Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Colley, you work for the Sheriff's Department, right? Yes, I do. And when the Sheriff's investigators hand you things to conduct your tests on, that is with the idea that you will do a thorough job. Is that right? Yes, that I'll do what they want me to do. Okay, in this case, did you do a thorough job when it comes to testing the clothing? Yes, I did what I normally do. The reason I ask that is because you just said that if you would have done more testing, perhaps you would have made more findings. Is there a reason that you do things the way you do? Yes, when it comes to clothing, yes, typically if I were going to sample clothing, I would like it sampled as it's being worn by the person, and then you can sort of section off areas. You can say this is from the left, you know, the left side, this is from the right side, this is the front or the back. When I get these clothing, typically they have been mixed together with other things, and therefore me sectioning off areas doesn't mean anything because the clothing has been folded. So if I were to sample the left side and say it came from the left side, could it have been on the right side and transferred to the left? Yes. So I have limited the areas that I sample when it comes to shirts and jackets to the sleeve area. When it comes to pants, it's waistbands. And if somebody wants to know that they think that a gun was in a pocket or in a jacket pocket, I'll then start sampling pockets. But that is what I've been typically doing when it comes to clothing, and this is because you've been trained to do it that way, right? Yes, and the classes that you have gone to have indicated this is the best way to do it. It's one of the ways. I mean, I certainly could take 50 discs and sample every inch of the jacket. I mean, you certainly could do that, and you don't do that because, well, 150 discs is going to, unfortunately, it's going to eat up a lot of instrument time. I mean, it's sad to say it's going to be 2 or 3 months of instrument time, and I don't know what more information, if I could find it specifically on this section of the shoulder blade, that the particle was found. Again, when the article of clothing has been folded, I don't know what more information that will tell somebody. Did someone ever tell you what other items of clothing or pieces of cloth or whatever were wrapped in the bag that contained this shorts and shirt and jacket? No, I don't know where those clothing were, what they came in contact with outside of when they got into the box that I examined. And that could be important, could it not? Yes, depending on where those clothes were, sure. So if, and you mentioned that if clothing is folded or placed with other clothing, these pieces of gunshot residue could migrate, they can fall off, they could get hooked up in another piece of cloth easily. Is that correct? Sure, once you start combining things, yeah, there certainly could be a transfer from one clothing to the next if the box is jostled or manhandled. You indicated that when you look at pants, for example, your training is that you first look at waistband areas. Is that right? Yes. Is that because oftentimes people put a weapon or a firearm in their waistband? Yes, and so you are not looking for particles that came from a weapon being fired. You're looking for particles that may have stuck on the weapon and then been transferred to the pants. That's one way that particles can get there. You can certainly fire a gun and have the particles land on the waistband. I'm just sampling the waistband because that's the likely area that a firearm could have been placed. Yes, sir, outside of shooting the gun. You can pretty much sample anywhere, but my focus is on waistbands. And then it comes to jackets. Again, the areas closest to the web area that gets sampled for hands. Yes, and my question is, certainly when you fire a gun, you can have gunshot residue anywhere on the pants, right? Yes, including the waistband, yes. But the reason to search the waistband primarily is because not only could it have gunshot residue from firing a weapon, but it could also have it because the weapon itself has gunshot residue on it, and then they stick it in their pants, then it's on their pants, yes, at the waistband. I'm capturing two different scenarios by sampling the area. You also said if there's some information where a weapon has been in a pocket, you sample inside the pocket. Yes, but I won't sample pockets automatically unless they said there's some information that a weapon could have been in that pocket. All right, now generally if a person fires a weapon, there's probably not going to be too many particles that will get down in the pocket, right? From firing the gun? Yes, no, it's not as likely. But if a weapon has particles on it, as many weapons do, and they are placed in a pocket, then it could get the gunshot residue into the pocket, right? And that's because gunshot residue is found or would indicate firing a weapon, touching a weapon that has been fired in the past, being close by when a weapon is fired, or touching something that may have gunshot residue on it. Is that right? Yes, and again, the testing cannot tell the difference between a particle firing a gun on your hand versus you picking up a gun. The particles look exactly the same because they are formed from the firing of the firearm. How they got to the surface, there's no testing that I can do that can answer that question. Let's go back a step. The things that we are talking about, this gunshot residue, the lead, the barium, and the antimony, you know, I've always called that antimony. There is another way you can say it, so I'm not wrong if I call it antimony. No, okay, I may say that because that is the way I've always been used to saying it, but you are looking for barium, lead, and antimony because those things are part of the composition of the primer on most cartridges, yes, and so that happens in a gun is that the trigger is pulled, the firing pin goes forward and hits the primer, which is on the back of the cartridge. Is that right? Right. That causes the primer to explode and lighting the gunpowder, which explodes, and that all comes out the barrel. Correct. The primer will burn, the gunpowder will burn, and since it's confined, you have a lot of pressure in a confined space. It can then push the bullet out. Okay, so the bullet goes out, and behind it is a little cloud of gas. Is that correct? Correct. Now, when we are looking for barium and antimony and lead, we are looking for microscopic particles. Correct? Correct. Are we talking about molecular particles? The general sense is these particles are around 1 to 2 microns, and a micron is a millionth of a meter. To put that in a non-metric system would be you can fit about 200 to 300 of these particles across the width of a human hair. Now, does that mean it's microscopic? Yes. Okay. I got a word list, a short word list. Ready? Sostanza, capital S-O-S-T-A-N-Z-A. GSR is capital G, capital S, capital R. So it's all caps, no periods, no spaces, GSR. Morgan Cooper, capital M-O-R-G-A-N. New word, capital C-O-O-P-E-R. Synergy Studio, capital S-Y-N-E-R-G-Y. New word, capital S-T-U-D-I-O. Cauley, capital C-A-U-L-E-Y. And that's it for the word list, and that will conclude our 190 Q&A practice test.